Good morning, Glendale. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer hearing for December 7th, 2022. My name is Roger Kiesel, and I will be conducting the hearing as hearing officer. The Planning Hearing Officer meeting is being broadcast live via or live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable, Channel 6, and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on YouTube at youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices, using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city's website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. We have one case involving discretionary permit applications this morning. That case is located at 127 Colorado Street. It's parking reduction permit case number PPRP 2207900. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will read a description of the application or request. Second, I will read the reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. Third, the case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be connected, well, they're here, so they won't be connected by telephone. The applicant will then make a brief presentation stating both their name and address, and they will be asked to present the case within a 25-minute time period. Or I'm sorry, a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be given 3 minutes to speak. And then lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to the testimony given preceding the speakers. And they will be given a 5-minute time period. The hearing will then be closed and taken under submission. Findings. If the findings presented in the application and at the hearing meets the required findings set forth in the municipal code, then the project can either be approved or approved with conditions. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Decision. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and having provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Records of decision for all projects will be posted online at the Planning Division's website. Appeals. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal must contact the case planner to obtain forms and information regarding the appeal process and submittal. Public notice. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by use of public notices which were mailed to property owners and occupants located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. I would like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of this meeting are being televised live and may be viewed online at the city's website. All right, so now we're down to the actual case. Again, the case is a parking reduction permit. It's proposed at 127 Concord. Parking reduction permit number PPRP 2207900. The project description is the proposed project includes the development of a new 5-story plus 2 basement storage levels. The project is 112 square feet. It's a personal mini storage facility. The storage building will be will contain approximately 985 storage units, ranging in size from 25 square feet to 300 square feet. There will also be an administrative office on the ground floor. The applicant is requesting a parking reduction permit to provide 7 parking spaces on site and 9 parking spaces across the alley, including 1 handicap space, where otherwise 112 parking spaces and 7 loading spaces would otherwise be required. The property or the subject site is zoned IMU, which is an industrial commercial mixed use zone. And the project has been determined to be exempt from CEQA as a Class 32 infill development exemption pursuant to Section 15332 of the state CEQA guidelines. The project meets all the conditions for an infill development project. So what I'd like to do now is turn the project over to Ms. Toledo, who will give a brief overview, and then we'll proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Keefe. As you indicated, this is a parking reduction permit associated with the 127 Concord. 1 second. Okay. Okay, great, thanks. I'll make sure to be very close to the mic.
Okay.
Okay, so again, this parking reduction is located for the property addressed at 127 Concord Street. The parking reduction permit request is to provide 7 parking spaces on site and 9 spaces across the alley, including the 1 handicap parking space, and the project would require 112 parking spaces based on the square footage of the building and 7 loading spaces. This is in conjunction with the construction of a new 5-story plus 2 basement storage levels of a new personal storage facility. Square footage is 112,216 square feet. And the building does include 869 square feet of office space on the ground level. And as you indicated, it is determined to be exempt from CEQA. The personal storage facility is classified as a warehouse wholesale use per the zoning code, where 1 parking space is required per 1,000 square feet of floor area, and loading requirements include 5 spaces for industrial buildings greater than 50,000 square feet, plus 1 additional space for each additional 50,000 square feet of floor area. So as proposed, the project would require 112 parking spaces, again, based on the square footage of the building, plus 7 loading spaces. The subject site is 21,345. It consists of 3 separate parcels. 2 parcels are located on the north side of the alley, and then 1 parcel, parcel 1, lies south of the alley. The location, again, is located on Concord Street to the east, Wilson Avenue to the north, and the 20-foot wide alley, which is public alley, proposed to remain located mid-block, which separates the subject site from the 9 parking spaces across the alley. Existing developments on site are proposed to be demolished, include 2 industrial vacant buildings and associated parking lots. There's a single-story industrial/warehouse building, and that building was built circa 1950, and that is north of the alley, addressed at 127 Concord, and there is also another single-story industrial building built circa 1925, located south of the alley, addressed as 111 Concord Street. Again, both buildings are proposed to be demolished. The buildings do not meet the criteria for historic designation at the national, state, or local levels. And this is the location in the IMU zone, industrial, commercial, mixed use. And highlighted in yellow, I've noted both the subject site and the existing alley. Across the alley are is the location of the 9 parking spaces that are proposed off-site. This is, again, the site plan providing more information on the subject site, the alley, and then the off-site parking spaces.
That alley is going to remain public, correct?
Yes. And then these are just some renderings of what the proposed building looks like, or will look like. Design review, as you know, will be a separate process, separate application. We're not reviewing that today. This hearing is simply for the request for the parking reduction permit. This is, again, just to show context and as it relates to the existing building that's currently there now, which is the brick building, and the existing alley, standing on Concord looking west. San Fernando Road lies on the other side of the alley towards the west, and then the off-site parking location is where the chain link fence is currently located.
So that's the alley in the center of the top photo?
Correct.
Okay.
So associated with the parking reduction permit, there are findings that need to be made. Before I get to that, I just wanted to briefly highlight, we did route this project to other departments for their comments. The comments are included in the staff report. There were pretty much, they were mainly just general comments, but some specific comments related to the request were submitted by the traffic engineering section, which requires the applicant to submit a truck turn analysis for truck access to loading bays. Public Works Engineering did comment that the applicant would need to remove and reconstruct the existing alley apron, any broken curbs along Concord Street, ramps, etc., along Wilson and Concord, and install a truncated dome surface to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. And again, other city departments that did comment, or they provided general comments or did not comment. So going back to findings, so the applicant is basing their request on findings for under subsection B. For any other circumstance where the applicant wishes to request a parking reduction, such reduction may be granted where the review authority finds that. And there are 3 findings that are required. So briefly, the new personal storage facility, again, would require 112 parking spaces, and 7 loading spaces are required for the new building. The project is providing 7 spaces on site and 9 spaces across the alley. The proposal does not include any code compliant loading spaces. However, 3 of the 7, and maybe I'll go back to that real quick. So 3 of the 7, and those would be, if you could see my cursor, 1, 2, 3 spaces on the subject site will have larger dimensions than your standard typical parking dimensions. So they will provide reasonable loading space for vehicles. But again, it doesn't comply with the required dimensions for a typical standard or loading requirement per code. The dimensions provided are 12 feet wide by 30 feet long. Standard loading dimensions required are 15 feet wide by 20 feet long, so it's more of the width is the issue here. The parking requirements for the proposed personal storage is far greater than the actual parking demands for the proposed use. Personal storage facilities have typically fewer employees than standard warehouse wholesale uses, so the applicant has indicated that the project would generate approximately 2 employees, but they are here and they could speak more on that note. And typically, most are customers at self-storage facilities park for short periods of time to unload and load their items. The applicants did submit a parking study, which was included as attachment 6, that analyzed the proposed use and the actual parking demand. The parking study included research from other jurisdictions with parking regulations for the proposed use and compared those results in similar parking numbers as those using the Institute of Traffic Engineers ratio. So finally, the submitted parking study concluded that based on the average of other cities' parking rates, the required parking for the personal storage use at 1 space per approximately 20,000 square feet was appropriate. So with that, I will conclude my remarks. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Great, thank you. Why don't we call up the applicant team first? Mike Discus.
Good morning, Mike Tiakos, Insight Property Group. Address is 19191 South Vermont, Torrance, California. Great to be here this morning and excited to present this project that we've been working on with staff the last 12 months. Milka has really given us a lot of her time and helping us get our head around design of the project, and that's greatly appreciative of getting us to this point. A little bit about our company. We've been in business since 2018. Since that time, we've either developed or acquired roughly 50 self-storage facilities in California, with a number of those stores being in our backyard of Los Angeles. So this is a use, this is a business we feel we know very well from an operational standpoint. All of our facilities, including this facility that's being presented here this morning, will be managed in-house through our own property management company, Secure Space. The goal is to have top-notch security. We'll have 24-hour video surveillance both on the interior and exterior of the building. The property will be well lit. Our property managers on site will be trained to monitor guests and customers as they enter and exit the facility. And generally, our goal for this facility and really all of our assets are to hold them for many years to come, and we'll maintain pride of ownership, make sure that landscaping is well maintained, so it looks very attractive for the community of Glendale and for the area. As far as the entitlement goes, as Milka stated, it's a request for a parking reduction application. I would like to say in terms of our project, we are fully code compliant in terms of FAR, landscaping requirements, height setbacks. The one deviation, again, as Milka noted, is a request for a parking reduction application. It's not uncommon for us to request this and entitling multiple projects throughout the country. Self-storage is a rather new use from an institutional standpoint. We really haven't seen a whole lot of development for this use in the last 5 to 10 years. And it's our opinion that, you know, a lot of the cities really across the country, but also in the city of Glendale, maybe just haven't gotten around to updating their municipal codes to explicitly state parking requirements for mini storage or self-storage use. And kind of to that point, you'll see on the slide, self-storage parking requirements are generally defined through a general warehouse and wholesale category, which requires 1 space per 1,000 gross square feet of building area, in addition to loading spaces, 5 loading spaces with an additional loading space for every additional 50,000 square feet of gross floor area. As Milka noted, that sort of calculates out to 112 parking spaces and 6 loading spaces, grossly over what the parking requirements that a facility of this size in this market would require. Typically, we could get away with operating a facility of this size with 7 to 8 units.
7 to 8 parking spaces?
7 to 8, yeah, 7 to 8 parking spaces, I apologize. What we've designed on site today is a total of 16 parking spaces, 13 of which is standard and 3 loading. As justification for the parking reduction application, we have engaged a traffic consultant, LSA Associates, based out of Irvine, who put together a parking demand study, which is included in the staff report. And LSA, by the way, is here today, and they can answer any questions regarding the report. But the report or the analysis essentially took into account 2 metrics. If we could go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. One is the report derives parking demand at the subject project per guidelines of the Institution of Transportation of Engineers, or ITE for short. They have a parking generation manual that sort of sets parking standards and parking needs for multiple uses, including self-storage and mini storage. Widely accepted manual used by jurisdictions, developers across the country. So this is sort of like the Bible for setting parking standards for various uses. But per ITE, many warehouse self-storage facilities have an average peak parking demand of 0.1 spaces per 1,000 gross square feet of floor area on weekdays, and then 0.09 spaces per 1,000 gross square feet on weekends. And when you sort of apply that calculation and that metric to our project, you see that the project would require 11 spaces on weekdays as well as 10 spaces on weekends. Again, just what we've designed today on site more than meets that requirement. In site, we've designed 16 parking spaces with 13 standard and 3 loading, which more than accommodates what ITE is recommending. If we could go to the next slide, the second metric that LSA looked at in the parking analysis is they actually researched cities in Los Angeles County that explicitly in their code have parking requirements for self-storage or mini storage facilities. And what we're seeing here on average is when you average out these cities' requirements, it typically requires about 1 space per 20,000 gross square feet of floor area, and about 250 or 1 space per 250 square feet of the office area. When you apply those averages to our project, as shown in this chart, you'll notice that the total required parking spaces is 9 at our facility, based upon other jurisdictions, other cities' parking requirements explicitly for self-storage. So certainly feel that the general warehouse classification, which sets parking standards for self-storage in the city of Glendale, is grossly overstates the parking needs at our store. And I think these metrics aside, just in operating 50 stores across California, we certainly understand what parking needs are. The reality is with self-storage, we'll have 2 property managers on site, which we hope to hire locally. But our average customer, they'll typically rent a storage unit, they'll drop their belongings off, store them. They typically don't come back for 6 to 8 months at a time. So this is really a less intense use. It doesn't generate a whole lot of traffic, and we're certainly comfortable with the design of our parking lot as shown today.
So let me interject real quickly so I can make sure that I understand this. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cities?
Yes.
Did I count correctly? 8 or 9 cities. So what this chart shows is their parking requirements for self-storage, and then had 127 Colorado sort of been transported to those cities, this is the amount of parking those cities would have required for this project.
That's correct.
And that's the sort of the right half of the chart.
That's correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
As far as findings, I think Milka addressed the first findings of fact per code to approve the parking reduction application is the parking need for land use is not as great for similar land uses or for parking requirement for the land use established in zoning code, which is greater than what will be needed by the land use. I think that's pretty clear. City of Glendale utilizes a general warehouse parking requirement for calculating mini storage and self-storage parking requirements. We meet this finding. Demand for self-storage uses is far less than your typical parking demand for warehouse and wholesaling. We plan to attract customers with average stays of 6 to 8 months, and very little traffic will be generated. Additionally, the employee count at our facility at roughly 2 will be far less than what would have been generated as a general warehouse use. The second finding of fact, the intent of parking regulations and compliance with all applicable provisions of this chapter is met. We believe this to be true as well. The intent of code is really to provide adequate off-street parking and loading spaces, so project does not have an impact on its surrounding area. And I think through the parking study and just through our experience managing many of these facilities, we are certainly providing adequate parking with the 16 spaces that we've designed on site. The third finding, sufficient parking will be required or provided to serve the use intended and potential future uses of the subject parcel. I think this finding sort of relates to finding number 1, as I had just described. We provided 16 spaces, whereas the parking study that LSA had put together notes we only need between 10 and 11.
Okay.
Yeah, so that sort of wraps up my presentation. The other thing, and I forgot to mention probably during the presentation, is newer facilities that have been built in Glendale, self-storage facilities, have received the parking reduction application approval. So I think, as far as an operational standpoint and what's required in the city, those facilities, meaning the public storage as well as the Trojan facility, they're certainly proving up that less parking is sufficient at these types of uses.
Okay. Where else does your company have comparable facilities in Southern California? And are they, I'm sorry, what was the name? Secure
Space is our property management company.
Okay, are they all labeled Secure Space?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So where else in Southern California, particularly, comparable cities are you operating now?
Yeah, so we heavily probably have several projects in Los Angeles, that we're either under construction on or approaching lease up here pretty soon. We're active in Northern California, San Jose, Walnut Creek, Sacramento. We just received an approval in the city of Palm Springs for a 130,000 gross square foot facility, which actually is larger than the facility that's being proposed today, but only has 6 parking spaces approved. And we feel like that's sufficient to operate a facility of that size.
Are the Walnut Creek and San Jose facilities, are they constructed and operating?
They will be under construction here shortly.
Okay. Do you have any that are operating now?
We do. We have a facility in Torrance
Okay.
that's being operated today.
Okay. Any other?
Torrance,
cities?
Long Beach, we're active in the Inland Empire, Rialto, Riverside County, as well as a handful of facilities in San Diego County.
Okay. And are the Torrance and Long Beach facilities, are they comparable size to Glendale in terms of the building? I mean, I'm not going to quote you, but.
Roughly,
Yeah,
yeah. I would
and-
say within 25 to 30,000 square feet.
Okay. And then roughly how many parking spaces do they have there?
I would say anywhere between probably 10 to 15,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you know offhand how large a typical moving truck is, like a U-Haul that, someone would use to move their stuff from wherever they're living to one of these 25 by 250 square foot storage spaces? I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's just kind of like a mid-sized truck, but.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of a mid-side truck or maybe a small minivan. One thing about this facility, we classify this as an urban facility. So although it's a generally large facility at 100,000 plus square feet, the average unit size in it is probably 85 square feet.
Okay.
You're typically looking at about an 8 by 10 for your average unit size. So this is really household goods. You're not looking at large, farm equipment and machinery that you would maybe in a suburban market. So your typical customer is driving minivans and small pickup trucks to transport their material from their home to.
So not necessarily even U-Haul trucks.
A U-Haul, maybe that's kind of similar to a small van.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So would the typical unit size in Glendale then, I would assume, be smaller than something in Rialto, which is, a more suburban location? Is
Typically,
that
generally, that's the case.
okay? Okay. And the operation is just like any other storage facility. I have my stuff in my van or my moving van that I want to store. I just park. You have trolleys or something that then I go to my unit, unlock it, put it in, lock it, and then come back and leave.
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Does Yasser Mohammed, would you like to speak?
I'm just here for any questions.
Okay. Dean Azabal?
I'm also here just to answer questions.
Got it. Anthony Maniscalchi.
You guys are keeping it warm in here at this point, huh?
It is pretty warm.
Yeah,
It was
it's a one way to
cool
get us out of
about
here.
half an hour ago, and now I'm like,
Thanks. Anthony Maniscalchi, Systems Real Estate. We are property management and brokerage here in the Glendale area. 3 generations operating in Glendale. I'm the adjacent property owner to the subject site and really have only 2 concerns on this property. That one, that it remain a storage facility and that any approval is conditioned upon the applicant covenant that it remain a storage facility. As we all know, future users really can't be identified. And my concern would be 10 years from now or 20 years from now, as mini storage maybe takes a different turn, that a given floor get converted to traditional warehouse or manufacturing, and the site is, at this point in time, constipated with parking, has no parking, which I'm okay with today, but I'm not okay with in a future change of use. So that being the case, I'd like to have the approval conditioned upon it remaining a personal storage or public storage facility. Number 2, the developer might answer this question, but construction and staging, we're going 2 levels underground, so we have a lot of trucks, we have a lot of transport, we have a lot of dirt, we have a lot of dust. I know the water boy will be there to keep the dust down, but I'd like to know where, so I can inform my tenants where those trucks, trailers, and tractors will be staged, where they enter. Will they enter on Wilson and exit out on Broadway, going down Concord? I'd like to know those questions. Outside of that, I'm generally a private property rights advocate, and I'm in support of projects. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Those are all the green cards I have. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? No. Okay.
Mr. Kiesel, regarding callers,
Oh, thank you, Miss Toledo.
no callers so
No
far.
callers. All right, you're teasing me. All right. You know, I think I mangled your name the first time. Do you want to come up and respond?
Yeah.
What was your last name?
Diakos, it's a tough one.
Diakos.
Diakos.
Okay. All right.
I could respond to the public comment. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
the 2 concerns.
Yeah, so happy to record a covenant to maintain this facility as self-storage use. That's the business that we know, and that's the business that we want to operate for many years. So totally fine with that. Have no plans to change the use. In terms of construction activity, I think a brief schedule. I think from today we would probably break ground on this project roughly 8 to 10 months from today. But as far as staging goes and trucks, our goal is to do as much staging on site as possible. And I think where that would happen would be in the parking area, the existing parking area that's just south of the alley. So we would stage trucks there to start, but also our goal is to not have any sort of blockage along Concord and Wilson, or at least limit that blockage as best we can. So we would utilize actually the parking, the existing parking that's along our property frontage, along the curb, along Concord and Wilson to stage trucks during construction, with the ultimate goal, again, of not creating any sort of blockage for our neighbors.
Okay. Great. I'm going to close the public hearing. Is there?
I just wanted also to note that there was one email correspondence
Oh, thank you.
that we received by Mr. Anthony Canellis. So that email correspondence was forwarded to you.
And I do have it. Thank you. Okay. Actually, I've got one more question for you. I'm sorry. Have you been able to read the condition or the draft conditions of approval?
We have.
Okay, are you fine with those conditions?
We are fine with them.
Okay, okay. You know, I would like to note, I know there was some concern about that the site remains a storage facility. Parking reduction permits are really use specific. So even, well, say the parking, or I'm sorry, the storage facility stays in place, 10 years from now wants to expand for whatever reason, you would need another parking reduction permit.
Yep, understood.
Similarly, well, sort of similarly, should this storage facility go away, the parking reduction permit, if it gets approved, goes away with that use. So, if the storage facility gets approved, gets built, 10 years from now, the building, the use of the building goes in a different direction. It's, you know, a warehouse, wholesaling, whatever. While that use may be permitted on that site, that change of use at this point would require either that use provide additional parking to meet up to code, or a new parking reduction permit be approved.
Understood.
So I think that would address Mr. Maniscalchi's concern with, you know, tying the proposed use in perpetuity to a storage. So,
And we're fine with that.
okay.
And also, Mr. Kiesel, wanted to bring up, there was a comment associated with like construction traffic or traffic associated with construction. The traffic engineering staff included a suggested condition where the applicant would be required to submit a construction traffic control plan for their review and approval.
Okay.
So they will need to follow up in the future with our traffic engineering staff as it relates to construction, traffic associated with construction. They need to review your plan.
Sure.
And you
So
need to
if this
work with
gets
them to-
approved, that will be a likely condition of approval. You'll need to work with traffic and transportation to get something approvable, and it would probably behoove you to work with your neighbors on that
Yep. Happy to.
staging.
We anticipating processing a traffic control plan through engineering and public works for their approval. And we could certainly engage the neighbors on that as well. So we make sure their needs are being met.
Okay, great. So I'm going to close the public hearing now. I'll take the case under submission. Thank you all for coming out, and the hearing has concluded at 10:25. Thanks. Bye.